Hey everyone, welcome to the Essentials channel once again. So in between of the project launches, we want to input a little bit of some news updates for you so that you can better make sense in terms of your decision making process and of course improve your thought process and facilitate the thought process of choosing which developments to go for. Alright, there are some telltale signs with the recent news and that is what we want to bring to you in today's review. So today will be a news review which is about the recent newspaper article about the increase in land betterment charges, and we see the various regions such as Bayshore, Marine Parade, so on and so forth, increasing more than 10% in the land betterment charges. So of course that one we will go in very deep detail later. But of course, most importantly, if you like my content so far, remember to like, share and subscribe, and also always remember to give me a quick call out at 9456-9398. We can set up a one-to-one consultation to cater to all of your scenarios and how do we piece up all of these concepts together, alright, to help you in your decision making process, especially when it comes to real estate and such a big ticket item. Alright, so today's newspaper article is actually reflected in the Straits Times that reported on a significant shift, the competitive bids for state land tenders lifting land betterment charges for non-landed residential. Now this isn't just any other boring text update, this is a direct signal about the future cost of property in Singapore. So the latest LBC rates for the period from September 1st, 2025 to February 28, 2026 shows a renewed interest in state land tenders, pushing up charges especially for non-landed residential properties. Areas like the Bayshore, Siglap, East Coast, Park and Serangoon are seeing significant jumps. It can also always mean both ways. Whenever there is a significant jump based on the definition of LBC charges, which we will deep dive into later, it also can signify one thing, that the government is going to be heavily developing this whole area, and that is why there is a significant increase in LBC charges. Or it can just mean that the construction cost and the tax levy have just increased because there hasn't been much of a revision in the past few years. They all were still based on previous LBC charges or developmental charges from previous markets because of the lack of developments in this area. So it can go both ways in a way. Alright, so with that in mind, let's deep dive into the article and take a look what is the major impact in terms of real estate and what should your actions be. So why should you be concerned about this? Because these changes are key factors in development cost and ultimately they influence the purchase price, which will be translated to the consumer's cost itself. So are you ready to understand how this could impact your property journey? Let's deep dive into it right now. So now we deep dive into understanding what is this land betterment charge about. So simply put, the land betterment charge is a tax imposed on the increase in the value of land that results from a chargeable consent. This could be when you are allowed to enhance the use of a site or build a bigger project on it, like in redeveloping en bloc sites or making alterations to an existing building. The LBC Act officially came into operation on August 1st, 2022. It's a game changer because it is a consolidated three previous charges. First was the developmental charge, temporary development levy, TDL, and differential premium, all under one single entity, which is the Singapore Land Authority. This simplification provides greater transparency and streamlines the process for landowners and developers. But most importantly, what is it for? The LBC ensures that an appropriate amount of the economic benefit from granting developmental rights returns to the community. This collected money is then used to fund essential infrastructure development and public programs by the government. Think about roads, public transport, parks, all the things that make Singapore a great place to live in. By taxing the increase in land value, the LBC charges and contributes to a sustainable property market, ensuring that the growth benefits everyone, not just a few. The LBC rates are dynamic, reviewed and revised every 6 months by SLA in consultation with the chief valuer. This half-yearly adjustment allows the rates to reflect recent market evidence, including land prices from government land sales and private collective sales. It's a crucial mechanism for the government to manage land values and development activity. Alright, so basically like what I mentioned before, whenever it comes to developing the area, definitely something must come from somewhere, right? Where are the resources going to come from? And of course, by increasing this LBC itself, it also contributes to a central fund where we can improve the infrastructure in the area. Remember, we always mention about the three-phase transformation framework, and that is exactly announcement, completion, infrastructure. So where do you think all the monies come from for the roads, for the parks, for the community centers, so on and so forth comes from. So instead of just benefiting that few people, in a way it is a collective benefit to the community within the area, and that is exactly what it's about. It also helps the population in the area gain additional benefits and communal activities. In a way, whenever the LBC charges increase, it can actually be a telltale sign for you as a consumer that the government is going to be heavily investing in the infrastructure within this area. It is a very, very awesome ecosystem, I must say, because before actually deep diving into this particular topic itself, I myself as the agent as well as the consultant, I myself also don't really understand so much about this concept. But to me, somehow the roads just magically appear, the parks just magically appear, and all we attribute it to is just taxpayers. And to everybody in the market, consumers always think developers are the ones that are getting the majority of the profits. But is it really true? Or actually the government has already a system in place and a metric in place to also take some taxes from them so that they do not profit so much. But most importantly, it benefits the consumers who actually got into the project itself. With that in mind, the consumers are also well rewarded, but with the number one focus in mind, which is livability. And this is quite a smart move from the government, which is to tax the developers based on that, so that it actually contributes back to the surrounding ecosystem as well as environment, and most importantly, infrastructure. Ultimately, it is the benefit of who? Singaporeans. That's why I always mentioned before, in pre-2014 and post-2014, what's the difference? Pre-2014 is how do we attract all the developers in? Everything is always about investments, right? But post-2014, cooling measures came in, and of course, I think the government also realized that the developers were benefiting too much, making it a lopsided benefit. In that sense, 2014's vision changed. Singaporeans first. Buy property as a need. But in order for it to be a very good need, it has to be something that is livable, something that is catered to families, something that is for the community. And I think this half-yearly revision starting from 2022, which consolidates all the taxes, I think this is a very smart move from the government to take the right things and cost from the developer to ultimately benefit everyone collectively. Number 3, the latest LBC updates. Notable areas and affected projects in 2025 reported some significant shifts. So now looking back to the period of September 2022 to February 2023, CBRE reported some significant shift. Number 1 is the non-landed residential, which saw the highest increase, averaging 12.9%. Sectors like Bukit Batok HDBs, Hillview, Hume, Cashew, Bukit Panjang, Choa Chu Kang areas experiencing a whopping 20% rise. This was fueled by robust demand at major new launches despite high unit pricing and enthusiastic land bids for sites like Lakeside Apartments and Parkview Mansions through collective sales and the record-breaking ECGLS at Bukit Batok West Avenue 8. That's the main thing. Actually, if you dive deeper, that was also the areas where the downtown line was actually running by. Because don't forget, actually the government in 2014 used two prime lands such as dual residences as well as Marina 1 residences to be exchanged with Malaysia to take back the lands that were surrounding the rail corridor. And if you look at the map itself, the rail corridor actually starts from Kranji all the way running down to Tanjong Pagar, and that was the railway station or the railway track that our forefathers used to travel up and down between Malaysia as well as Singapore. And because of that exchange itself, that's why now Singapore is able to develop the lands surrounding where the railway track passes. And if you dive deeper, you will realize that the downtown line actually runs in parallel to the rail corridor. And these are the areas that were actually surrounding the rail corridor. You have Cashew, you have Hillview, you have Hume, right? These are areas that are actually entering the infrastructure phase after the downtown line's completion. Cannot be the government spends so much billions of dollars into improving the transportation and just to allow a small population in the Hillview area to utilize it. Am I right? There must be an influx of population to make sure that the money is well utilized and it is more efficiently used. And that is the main reason why suddenly you see a lot of developments coming into the areas. But the key question to ask is, who is then going to pay for the infrastructure changes such as the roads, such as the parks, and all the communal facilities that will be developing in this area? And that is of course where the LBC charges will come in. And if you look back, these are areas that we consider as ulu or can be forgotten. If you ask every Singaporean in the past, back into the 2020s or 2015s, they will say, wow, Hillview, it is one of the most ulu place ever. But today, actually, don't you realize it's never ulu anymore. In fact, it has become one of the most accessible places or popular places where healthy lifestyle activity takes place. You see young couples or you see families walking along the rail corridor, and there must be some form of funds coming in to help contribute to the infrastructure, right? And that is where the LBC is. In the past, it used to be ulu, there's no construction there, the LBC is low. But of course, now with so much construction going on and population influx coming in, there must be a fund or something contributing to the infrastructure construction, right? And this is where the LBC comes in. So this is to help you put things into context. Now, moving on. We have the landed residential group with a moderate increase of 10.2% on average, such as the Cluny, Napier saw a 13.6% increase. Next, we have another group, which is the commercial group. The commercial rates rose by 5.4% on average, with CBD and Orchard area seeing increase of 7.7% and 8.1% respectively. So then again, just by following this trend, you will realize that this is actually where the transformation was announced for Orchard area. So the plan for Orchard area, there is actually this URA policies which offer various incentives to rejuvenate Orchard Road, including bonus GFA incentive scheme for developments incorporating specific design outcomes, the built environment transformation GFA scheme for promoting productivity and sustainability, and past initiatives like crash grants for underground pedestrian links. So you see, with this itself, with this bonus gross floor area, a lot of buildings within the Orchard area are also old buildings. Same goes for the CBD area also. By having this incentive, it actually creates a little bit of an ecosystem or a self-motivating factor amongst the older buildings to be renewed and rejuvenated. In a way, because of this incentive, it gives developers every mean and meaning and intent to buy over or take over certain older properties within Orchard area so that they can capitalize on this bonus GFA incentive program. So the developers themselves also benefit. And with that in mind, that's why you see a rise in LBC charges for both CBD and Orchard area. Also, although you may think, wow, rise means it translates this cost to the consumers, but it also means there is new transformation or rejuvenation coming within this area. So this is actually a very good telltale sign whenever they want to increase the LBC within the certain areas. That means that certain infrastructure changes are coming, and that can be seen from the URA policies. Of course, to wrap it up, in the past, we have the industrial groups that actually the rates went up by 2.3% on average, signaling strong investor sentiments for the sector. I think such a small increment also just means one thing. It's just the government is not exactly focusing on a lot of transformation within the industrial area, or the industrial area has hit its stable stagnating point, which government does not see the need in increasing the developmental charges. So next, we fast forward to today. So we do a past, present as well as compare. So if we look at today right now, there is a new update based on September 2025 to February 2026 as reported by the latest article in Straits Times, as we can see in this article here. Alright, so now we go into the TLDR of it. The non-landed residential LBC rates are set to rise by another 0.7% on average. This might sound small, but it's building on the previous increases like what we mentioned before, where we saw the average increment of 12.9% based on the previous time where we actually saw big news coming out like that. The most significant increases were in areas like Bayshore, a sharp increment of 15.4%, Siglap, East Coast Park and Serangoon. The hike in Bayshore is directly attributed to the benchmark GLS of 1388 per square foot per plot ratio for the Bayshore roadside. The Lorong Chuan area reported a 9.5% increase, reflecting the award of the Chuan Grove GLS site. Alright, so we can see from here, actually these were all the recent lands that were sold, some even as recent as less than a month ago, as according to the date of this YouTube video. Alright, and you can see exactly these are areas that hasn't been touched or developed for the longest time. I mean, I personally grew up in Chuan area because I grew up in Golden Hill Park. There hasn't been much development or infrastructure changes for the longest time, meaning to say about what, 10 to 15 years even? And yes, from the time until now, I'm 36, there isn't much changes in terms of infrastructure, and that's why there hasn't been much changes in terms of the developmental charges or the LBC rates here. But that also signifies one thing. It signifies infrastructural improvements or a possible transformation that may be coming into this area, and that's what we are seeing in the recent land sales. That's why we saw 2 lands being sold within this area, the latest one being bidded by Hoi Hub as well as Sunway. Alright, and is that a telltale sign for you to actually take advantage of this first movers advantage to get into it right now. Next is of course the Bayshore. That will be the entirely new township that will mimic a Bidadari Estate's blueprint, and of course it will be a car light zone, meaning to say that autonomous vehicles will come in. We have to make sure that the roads are compatible, the connectors, the parkways, the parks itself, the pathways, everything are all car light. And of course, who is going to be contributing to all of this costing as well as infrastructure changes? Definitely the pool of funds coming from the LBC charges. And this time around, the increments, it is also a collective effort to tax developers as well as translate a little bit of the cost to the consumers. But because it is the economies of scale where every consumer, we take a little bit, right, just to contribute for a collective good as a whole to develop this certain township. And I think this is quite a smart ecosystem as what we have mentioned before. So moving forward, we have the next one, which is East Coast Park, Marina East, East Coast Park Area B, each recorded a 12.1% increment, anticipating the rollout of the new master plan for this waterfront precinct. Alright, so maybe you might have actually heard of the Long Island master plan, which that itself is going to be in effect after 2040. I think there are some major changes that might be coming up in the East Coast Park area, since although we haven't heard of any new developments coming up, we haven't heard of any changes to the areas, but I think this is a very strong telltale sign and indicator that something big is going to be happening to the East Coast Park. For all you know, as what Mr. Heng Swee Kiat mentioned before, the East Coast plan is really coming into fruition and materializing soon.
Singapore, we have a together at East Coast plan. We care at East Coast. So we look forward to working closely together with our residents to enable the East Coast and the whole of Singapore to emerge from this stronger.
As much as we can laugh about it, but I think they are really putting it into action right now. Alright, so next will be of course the landed residential LBC rates increased by 0.4% on average, reflecting rising demand in enclaves like Holland Road, Bukit Timah and Thomson Road. 0.4% is quite a negligible increase. I think riding on the previous wave of the landed boom, which happened right after COVID, for the longest time there hasn't been much changes in the developmental charges or ultimately the LBC rates. So with that in mind, back then there was some adjustments in the year 2022 for the landed area, but right now in the landed aspect there hasn't been much movement as well because of prices, because of looming economy downturn news previously. Of course, the landed sector is mostly affected by such news, and that's why there hasn't been much natural demand or high demand going into the landed sector. So government isn't focusing too much on it. That's why it's only a 0.4% increase. Next, of course, for the commercial aspects, LBC rates edged up a marginal 0.1%, with office dominant sectors in the CBD remaining flat. Industrial LBC rates climbed 1.6% on average, with the highest increase of 9% in areas like Kallang, MacPherson, Ubi, Tai Seng, boosted by collective sales. This constant revision based on recent land sales and competitive GLS bids clearly show that the demand and developer confidence are directly influencing these charges, which in turn affect the cost of future projects. So now we finally understand what LBC charges mean and the respective impacts that it has on the various regions. So what does it mean for you as a buyer in today's market? So if you're buying right now, what do these rising LBC really means for you? Number one is the higher development costs leading to higher prices. The most direct impact is that LBC hikes increase the total cost of developing land for developers. When developer pays more for the right to enhance a property or build bigger, they often pass these increased costs on to the home buyer. This means we could see higher new private prices moving forward. Number two, the shift in developer strategies. Higher LBC could make developers more apprehensive about acquiring land through en bloc sales, potentially leading to fewer of such transactions. If this happens, developers might shift their focus to government land sales exercises, increasing competition and driving up land bid prices for the state land. Again, these higher land bid prices also can translate into higher property prices for you. And that's the main reason why actually right now you see a lot lesser of en blocs happening in the market right now, because of all these additional taxes and charges, and not only that, the higher buyer stamp duty that they are supposed to be paying for an en bloc property. Alright, last time it just used to be I think about 4%, but right now it's a 4 plus 5, it becomes 9%. So all this actually affects the costing that goes into en bloc sales. And that's why you see a lot lesser en blocs happening in the market. The last time around where we saw a lot of en blocs was actually in 2017 to 2018, where we saw more than 60 en blocs resulted in more than 60,000 units coming into the market eventually. Where is it right now? And it's also because of all these policies in place that are actually controlling the developer strategies and market trends. And it is also crucial for the government to maintain this way, because if you look at the past few cycles, it's quite hard to have two en bloc cycles coming consecutively, because it is just a replacement of demand and supply numbers. Alright, what the government wants is actually higher supply numbers to cater to future population growth. But if we are just doing an en bloc, meaning to say we uproot 500 people just to create maybe 700 to 800 homes, these 500 people suddenly experiences a windfall of $2 million or $3 million. Am I right to say these people also can become the demand of the market as well, and it will take up certain market share and supply that is going to be coming into the market. So it's not exactly a new supply of 1,000 units. Some of it, 30 to 40% of it, will be taken up by these people who have experienced the windfall. Alright, so with that in mind, it also drives prices up, because these people with such a windfall is able to pay and have the resources to do so, right? In a way, increasing prices as well, but yet the supply does not increase dramatically. So with the new population growth, definitely we cannot have two consecutive en bloc cycles, because again, it's just a left pocket, right pocket in terms of demand and supply numbers. The government wants developers to go for government land sales. That's why if you realize the past few cycles in terms of Singapore property, it is always alternating. One cycle is government land sales, the next cycle is en bloc. So it is the toggle of these policies, alright, or maybe the catching up of certain costs that causes this toggle as well. Number 3, the first movers advantage is real. Like what we always say, get into the market first, especially with such robust policies in Singapore that keeps housing prices aligned with our income. Alright, and that is exactly what all the cooling measures are for. So the cooling measures is here to make sure that the prices stay affordable and aligned so that people can afford this need. Then of course the government will have to do its part to control certain aspects through policies to make sure the right people are paying for the right cost. Alright, it is after all a collective effort to build the country together, to build the township together. It's not just a one-party benefits, or such as the developer, or can be also the consumers. If the consumers benefit too much as well, in a way all the profits goes to the consumers, what will happen in a sense? The market will in a way shoot up too fast, because the consumers constantly have big windfalls coming down, but it is not exactly benefiting the society in a way. So what they want to do is also a two-way approach. But of course, the key thing is getting your feet into the wave and getting one step into the market as well. Current property launches are based on previous market conditions with lower LBC rates and land bid prices. This offers a safe entry point and a first mover's advantage. So are you sitting on the sidelines while others are securing their dream home at more favorable prices? Properties currently on the market or launching soon likely reflect development cost from time before these latest increase fully take hold. With that in mind, that's why we talk about the first mover's advantage. Exactly all the current launches that you see in the market is based on previous markets, land bid cost, as well as the LBC rates. And of course, because of all these news coming up, it also translates into higher housing prices and launch prices. In a way, what we are just saying here is get your foot into the market right now, capitalize on whatever previous rates are. In a way, each high is always higher than the previous high, each low is higher than the previous low. And like what I just mentioned, we can count on the government to keep the economical factors as well as dynamics safe, aligned with our income, so that everybody is able to afford this need. Alright, so meaning to say the natural demand is there. You don't have to worry that, hey, what if people cannot afford in the future? Because I've got many slides in my previous video or even in this current video that I can put in to showcase that why you will always have a clear exit strategy, because why? The government has it all under control in a way. So speaking about which, the market dynamics, the government's measured approach through these LBC adjustments aim to moderate the property price growth while still maintaining investors' confidence. This suggests a carefully managed market where increases are generally in line with demand and economical conditions rather than sudden uncontrolled surges. Understanding this shift is crucial for making informed decisions in the Singapore dynamic real estate market. Alright, so all in all comes the final verdict of what do I actually feel how this news is going to impact our prices. I think it's not the first time where we see developmental charges going up or LBC rates going up. In fact, last time it was broken down into 3 different individual components and it wasn't so transparent back then. Right now, ever since 2022 happened, they consolidated all these 3 different components to come together to form the LBC rates, and this makes it an easy metric to gauge how the market is moving forward, but most importantly to make sure that the market is on a very controlled basis where the home prices align with our income, with all the measures that the government has put through. I think over the last 3 years we have seen a consolidation of metrics such as the JFA harmonization as well, that makes things a lot easier, a lot more transparent, and a lot more cost effective with affordability in check. I think all these measures are good things done by the government to improve past policies and of course to make it relevant to today's costing metric as well as understanding. So with that in mind, actually how is this going to impact our prices, and what do I really feel? I actually feel that this is a good gauge and a good indicator of where the government's next transformation or next development is going to be. It is a good telltale sign for you to capture the market opportunities. Many may think that the prices are all going to go up, which is very true. Cost is going to go up, which is very true also, but it's also because through these measures it is also a regulation of who pays what as well, and I think this is a good ecosystem that the government has done. So with that in mind, three main factors: number one, the managed market growth; number two, the strong fundamental demand; and number three, the strategic exit potential. So entry is taken care of, the exit is taken care of, then most importantly, how do we manage the market for a sustainable growth? They do not want huge fluctuations like how it was before pre-2014, where we were very susceptible to external market forces, and that's why the existence of such regular adjustments of the LBC demonstrate a highly managed approach to property development. The LBC purpose is to ensure economic benefits from the land value enhancement are returned to the community and used to fund infrastructure. This continuous calibration by the SLA in consultation with the Chief Valuer act as a stabilizing force, preventing unchecked speculation and ensuring growth is sustainable. Right, while LBC adjustments can lead to higher prices, they are a part of a broader strategy to maintain market health. Number two is of course the strong fundamental demand, where we always have the blue line versus the red line, if you remember correctly, which is the income versus the property prices. So this strong fundamental demand arises from the change in government vision in 2014, where the vision has changed to buying property as a need, Singaporeans first. Alright, meaning to say the need for a house or need for a shelter is very high. You buy property because of that need. So with that in mind, this creates a robust development because of this mindset being instilled into Singaporeans. But most importantly, like what we have been repeating consistently within this whole video, it is of course the government taking care of the economical factors that will affect the affordability of this need. And that's why you see the government behind the scenes ensuring that the income aligns with housing prices. As long as the income aligns with the housing prices, affordability is met. Alright, so that is on the economical factors. Next, we also have the URA policies focusing on livability. Alright, as long as it focuses on livability, it means that family needs, lifestyle are met. With that being met, the natural demand will come into the market. There will always be an exit strategy for you, and that's why we will lead to the exit strategy. And if you look at this newspaper article down here, we will actually see even in the CCR this is happening right now. So within the CCR itself, about close to 98 to even 99% of the purchases are all local demand. So you can see how sustainable the market is already, with majority are all local. What does local demand mean? It also means one thing: stability. Alright, if you look at Dubai or other countries where we have high foreign ownership, what does high foreign ownership also mean? It just means one thing: whenever shit hits the fence, everybody just drop everything they have and go. Whenever you have high foreign ownership, it also means another thing: these people who can come out to buy a property in another country is not a need, it's a choice, right? It is an investment choice that they go for. It means they have spare disposable cash or income, meaning to say anything happen again, they can just drop and go, hit and run. Because why? Anyway, this is excess cash that I didn't need it anyway, I just park overseas in maybe like Dubai or somewhere else, and that will cause huge fluctuations in the market. With the last thing, like what I mentioned, it leads to clear exit strategy. Because of this need, with livability factors being met, you can be assured that there will always be a resale buyer for you as long as you market your unit based on the valuation price. Meaning to say, liquidity here in Singapore is quite okay, it's quite liquid in that sense. As long as you go for your usual market price, you don't ask for sky high rocket prices, your property can exit and it can liquidate, because people buy property in Singapore as a need rather than a choice. And as long as they can afford this need, they would just go for it within the market prices itself. That's why this vision, we all have to understand very clearly. Buy property in Singapore as a need. Who cares about the tariff war? Who cares about whatever Iran war? I need a shelter over my head in Singapore. The most the war comes to Singapore just sink lah. But in that sense, the need is met, and that's why you will always have a clear exit strategy. So you can see how the different facets the government has been taking care of. Behind the scenes, they are taking care and regulating the prices through policies like the LBC rates to make sure that it is being regulated in a certain way, and the collective effort of different parties coming out to contribute collectively. Next, we have also economical policies that ensures affordability. Next, we also have the URA taking care of livability. It also meets the demands of Singaporean families, right, to ensure livability is there so that natural demand is there. So can you see the multifaceted policies that have been in place to make sure Singapore property market remains very robust. So gone are the days where we are so much affected by external market forces, so much dependent on foreign investments, and all these people are just buying not for a need but for a choice. In a way, it causes a lot of instability, but today we see a very stable market because of this multifaceted approach that Singapore has been taking advantage of. So in a way, if you are still sitting on the fence right now and thinking whether should you go in, I think all the safety nets in these various aspects has been taken care of. Get one foot in so that you can use this ecosystem to build capital, right? So that you can go through the 4P concepts, just like my previous video, and it can help you build capital, experience your capital leapfrog, so that you can slowly move from a 2-bedder to a 3-bedder to a 4-bedder and take advantage of this ecosystem that we have down here in Singapore. Now, the key most important point is this. We can talk about all these economical factors, but am I right to say, as long as you don't know the market's call to action and you don't know how to choose your property and your unit, am I right to say you also run a very high risk in terms of your property purchase? So rather than piecing up different videos from different influencers and YouTubers, what I can do for you is also sit down with you, run through a solid framework step by step, why we are doing this, how do we be a buyer today, and most importantly, what to choose in the market. From there, we can set up a one-to-one consultation to cater to your scenario, and we can come up with a solid approach. All right, and most importantly, it's not about planning just this purchase. It is a lifelong journey together where I can map out the entire roadmap, how your capital will be projected, what are the appreciation, and most importantly, what are the new numbers coming out and the new capital coming out that can contribute to your next future purchase 5 to 10 years down the road and even 15 years down the road. It is the solid game plan that ensures you have a healthy amount of retirement by the time you hit the age of 65 or possibly earlier. So set up your one-to-one consultation with me as well. My number is 94569398. Remember, if you like my content so far and you appreciate the reviews that we have been doing, remember to like, share and subscribe and click on the link below. Till next time, I'll see you in the Essentials channel.